One Corpus Christi museum is getting some much-needed repairs to help with repairs needed after Hurricane Harvey. The Museum of Science and History now has more than $300,000 thanks to a grant from the Rebuild Texas Fund. Officials with museums say the facility suffered extensive damage from the storm, including water damage for some of the exhibits. Money from the grant will be used to fix those damaged exhibits.